What's up, college football addicts? We are back again with another video that you clicked on because you saw Kirk Herbstreit on the thumbnail. We spoke about Kirk just a couple of days ago, and we did so very much from the Florida State perspective, but we've got something a little bit different today. Florida State fans are not the subject of the video, nor are they the subject of the vitriol that's headed Kirk Herbstreit's way. No. It's the other team that we talked about in that video, and it is now Georgia. Georgia fans very upset and very frustrated with Kirk Herbstreit over a story that came out yesterday on National Signing Day about Dylan Raiola, specifically Dylan Raiola's dad. We'll talk about what happened. We'll show you a clip here in just a moment. We'll talk about UGA's reaction, and then we'll talk about why this is so strange that it happened. But do me a favor very quickly, Georgia fans, Florida State fans, Alabama fans, SEC, Big 10, whoever you cheer for, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Let us know that you enjoy this content. Maybe you just don't like ESPN. You may not like any of those teams that I just mentioned. If you don't like ESPN, we'll probably make a video or two on this channel that you'll enjoy. Hit the subscribe button and show some support there. So what happened? Well, when it was rumored that Dylan Raiola may be considering another option, maybe considering not being at Georgia, Kirk Herbstreit, per Raiola's father, we'll show you that clip in just a moment, reached out and did his very best to convince Raiola to go to Nebraska, convince him to stay away from UGA, to not end up playing for Kirby Smart in Georgia. Let's listen to Raiola's dad speak on the subject.
We'll bring up one guy's name. His name's Kirk Herbstreit. When he saw the smoke about Dylan entertaining Nebraska, he was like, called me. He said, "Dude, is this true? He got to do it. He got to do it." His affinity for Nebraska, for a guy like that to tell me and to get behind me. Look, I knew he needed to do it, but I wasn't going to sit here and say you need to go change that place or be a part of the change at that place. So when Kirk told me that, I was like, man, this is, I've had people reach out, other coaches reach out to me and say, look, the place is special. Coach Rule's a special leader.
Now, I wouldn't say that UGA fans are upset about this, as Florida State fans have been about the playoff, about the snub, about getting screwed out of the playoff or anything like that. But UGA fans certainly aren't thrilled about it by any means, and certainly understand why. UGA fans I've seen have on social media even made kind of a list of how they feel like College Game Day has wronged them recently. You think about very first up, they got rid of David Pollock, who was probably the best part of that show, and they replaced him with Pat McAfee, who a few weeks into the season told Georgia fans to sit down and shut their you-know-what's up. And then a few weeks later, it comes out that Kirk Herbstreit was calling recruits, families, to try to influence a kid to not end up at UGA. Now, I don't necessarily know that any of that is related. I don't know that any of that is tinfoil hat conspiracy related, but I do know that it shows that ESPN certainly uses their biases and certainly uses their influence in ways that may not be appropriate. It's strange to me that ESPN would do this, and Kirk Herbstreit would do this specifically, and I want to talk about that in just a moment, but I also want to relate this back to what Florida State fans have tried to tell the college football world over the last several weeks. It's strange to me that a broadcaster would do this because Kirk Herbstreit's not even allowed to pick the games that he's calling on College Game Day. Yet he's allowed to reach out to a recruit's family and try and influence where that recruit goes to college. You tell me what's more impactful. You see, Kirk Herbstreit could pick the game that he's calling that night and give his unbiased take on who's going to win and why they're going to win, and that has no impact on the game. That has no impact on the results on the field. In fact, I don't even see why that would be a problem. I don't see why we're limiting that, but that's ESPN's decision. That's totally fine, and I'm fine with it. They don't want the broadcast to come across as maybe biased one way or the other. Well, our biases as humans are always going to show through. Our biases as humans are always going to exist. But if you don't want them to show up, if you don't want them to show out in these situations, I get it. If you're ESPN, I understand it. I don't have a problem with it. But if you're going to hold yourself to that standard, how can you call parents of recruits and tell them they need to send their kid to this school or that school? I don't even know that it would be appropriate fully for him to do that for Ohio State, where he graduated from, at an Ohio State type event, just because of who he is and the situation that he's in. It's certainly not appropriate for him to be doing it with a Georgia-Nebraska recruiting battle. Why did he feel the need to do this? I don't know that that's something you'll ever find out. I'm sure in a couple of days you'll get some kind of BS from him going off on somebody on Twitter, a Georgia fan, maybe even today, him going off and absolutely losing his cool over a Georgia fan calling him out for it. He'll call them fringe lunatics. He'll call them paranoid. He'll call them all kinds of names like he's done to Ohio State fans and Florida State fans recently as well. In fact, speaking of lunatics and paranoid, I found this tweet from Danielle Kelly. I'll link it in the description, but speaking on Kirk specifically, and she relates this a lot to what Florida State's going through with the ACC, but you can understand that this is the same person that she's talking about that we're talking about today. She said the media person who decided to post these things, calling Florida State fans lunatics and paranoid, and get everyone riled up for clicks, works for an organization that is part of the ACC's grant of rights at the same time that Florida State is actively suing in a court of law to have it declared invalid. The same organization that's involved with the SEC, the same organization that Disney was even selling off parts of and had to lose employees. That's the same organization that Florida's Attorney General is in an antitrust demand letter, has sent one asking for conversation between them and the college football playoff. That's the same organization, ESPN, that has the broadcasting rights to show the college football playoff and let them voice their opinions, the committee. The same organization that's cited in the Florida State lawsuit against the ACC, which is separate because then Commissioner Swofford decided that he wanted to save his son's business. This is the same organization that does not want Fox Sports involved with Florida football in the Southeast. Same organization that even the Big 12 had to issue cease and desist letters to. If I'm not making my case, I'll let the attorney, Danielle Kelly, do so for you. This organization of unbiased folks who don't impact the playoff committee, who don't impact recruiting, who aren't trying to push a narrative, aren't trying to mold things the way they want them, certainly seems to have some biases in what they're doing. You see Saban to ESPN yesterday. I went down the rabbit hole on another channel about how that could certainly be looked at as a conspiracy theory. But does it all make sense now? Kirk being unbiased, does his reaction in that Iron Bowl make sense now? Did he know that Saban would now have a shot at the playoff if they could somehow upset Georgia, which they did, all credit to them. But does it make sense, his reaction at this point? Does the reaction somewhat make a little bit more sense? I think so. He celebrated more during that touchdown on that 4th and $1 billion than he did when Saban actually got hired with ESPN. Did he know that his buddy that would soon be his colleague would maybe have a chance at the playoffs? Was that unbiased? Well, that was about as unbiased as him calling a recruit's dad and trying to get him to go to a different school. Florida State fans have been upset at Kirk for a while. They've thought that Kirk was very biased in what he was saying. They point to the fact that Kirk was petitioning for them to get left out of the playoff before the injury to their quarterback even happened. And now UGA fans can join in on the fight. Now UGA fans can look at him and say the same thing. Hey, this was not appropriate. Florida State fans have their documents in order, their complaints, their grievances, shout out to Seinfeld, in order. I'm starting to see UGA fans do the same thing. I'm starting to see UGA fans ring the battle cry of, wait a minute, here are all these things that have happened. We mentioned them. Pollock being let go. McAfee cussing them out. And now Kirk actively advocating for one of their top recruits to go on. Raiola at Nebraska will have a bigger impact on Nebraska than him not being at Georgia. There's no doubt about it. Georgia will still be Georgia. That doesn't kill their recruiting class. It doesn't crush them as a program or anything like that. But for an unbiased journalist to stick his hands and his nose in something that he has no business doing is pretty interesting to see. And again, I think it has UGA fans maybe not sympathizing with Florida State. I know that they've been going back and forth for months, But I do think it has them understanding Florida State fans' complaint about Kirk, the four-letter network, the fight that Florida State is in right now. And I think it has them somewhat understanding where they're coming from. Brand new channel. If you're a fan of Florida State, Georgia, just don't like ESPN, whoever you cheer for, hit the comments. Let me know, and let's talk about this situation specifically. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel because we'll continue to cover college football on College Football Addiction.